Hello, everybody. Andy Goldberg here. Welcome to the Founders Chair podcast. Very, very delighted to have on our show today Colin McNally from CJM. Colin, welcome to the Founders Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you very much for the invite.
Why don't we just start off by you telling us a little bit about you personally, where you're from, where you live, family, hobbies, etc.
I've jumped over that 50 milestone now. And basically we live in Alloway, which is just south of Ayr, which is down the west coast of Scotland. Kind of pretty much always lived that neck of the woods most of my life. So I originate about 30 miles south in a small village, coastal village. So I'm married my wife Tracy and our dog Sky. And yeah, I've been kind of working in the business now for 16 years. But outside that, I still play the fiddle. Whole bundle of fiddling accountant jokes there coming in. And then from there, about I started life off in Diageo after I graduated. And from there, I spent 12 years and then I set up my own 16 and a half years ago now, September 2008.
Okay, well, we're going to hear all about that for sure. What tell us about how it came about. What drove the decision to go out on your own?
There's probably I can say there's an itch I had to scratch, but I mean the ultimate driver was quite simple. I was made redundant. Um, the usual one of the few prongs that can I get you started.
That is
But
a common, yeah, that's a common story. Yeah.
yeah, I was made redundant. It was a managed redundancy. It wasn't as if I turned up one day and I was made redundant. I worked for Diageo PLC for 12 years, mainly doing financial control of IT projects based out of Glasgow, work globally. And the reality was, and I'm sure there's numerous other reasons, but my job was somewhere moved to the Philippines and Budapest. And to be honest, I didn't really fancy the move. Various reasons, Andy, actually, I think I probably had enough. I'd probably done 7 or 8 years of constant flying, constant, moving about, global, um, slightly older parents, probably wanted to slightly settle down as well. So yeah, that type of scenario kind of was always in the back of my mind. So redundancy suited me. It kind of gave me that opportunity. The the background is probably much deeper than that because my family are pretty much all been in business in some way for literally generations. So there's a little bit of driver of basically probably past. There's a bit of driver of business and a bit of driver of academic. So I ticked the academic box. I went and got my BA in business studies and that type of thing, and then became an accountant and got that. But yeah, there was always a piece that I probably wanted and ended up working for myself. My dad, it wasn't a big business. My dad basically ran a shoe shop and ran a tourist shop, and we sold to farms, and we had a shoe repair shop. So I was always working on that from a kid. I
Hmm.
mean, literally, I can genuinely remember selling stuff at age 4 or 5, and I was always out on the road with my dad. So I was very used to his ability not to sell to people. Does that make any sense? He never sold anything to anybody. Nobody, he just had patter. He just knew them and got to know them, and he sold that way rather than he was not a salesman in
That's the way it
true
used to be done.
expectation.
Though. I mean, I don't know that you can
Yeah,
get away with that anymore, but that's the way it used to be done, and people who could do that
yeah.
well succeeded.
And there's a bit in that. There's a bit in that in me. That's what I kind of do. We're not hard, high pressure type sales folk. We literally we make relationships, we build them, we deliver, and kind of move on from there. The other side that probably drove me, believe it or not, was academic. So my mother was probably slightly more academic than my father. An aunt, basically, who was highly academic. She basically, at the time, and it doesn't sound much nowadays in a balanced society, she became kind of deputy head of Stirling High. Now, she was never going to get the top job because she was female. That was not done in those days. And I think the academic side, the enjoyment of research, the enjoyment of that academic piece really kind of took over. So that kind of got me into Diageo, and that kind of took me to the next level. And as I say, the itch there to probably knew I wasn't going to follow in my father's business. Wasn't kind of big enough, if I'm honest. Wasn't earning enough money out of it. So therefore, I probably had my niche as accountancy. I truthfully never wanted to be a true accountant, as you probably think of the whole bookkeeping type scenario. My interest came through Diageo. I basically worked in projects, and therefore I did a lot of project financial work, methodology work, and therefore that was probably where I'm most comfortable and still am still. So yeah, the consultancy kind of piece dragged me into that side of it.
Okay. And when you went into business for yourself, what gave you the confidence to know that you could succeed, or did you know that you would, or was there doubt?
No, well, I knew I had something that I could basically sell. So we developed a methodology that kind of was around. It was all connected to project management. So I knew there was something there. But I'll be honest, we started off in a plan to be a consultant for larger companies. So we ended up back working for Diageo, doing about 18 months there. We were always looking for that. I mean, I'm talking, the kind of multi-million pound financial management project level. That's what I did for 12 years. So I thought I'll continue in that. Um, the reality probably struck that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I'd probably had greater interest in smaller business and the general growth business and thinking how I could use the skills I kind of learned in Diageo plus the methodology, which we nearly kind of got it fully launched, etc., but it never happened because we ended up working with the University of Abertay Business School and we took it down to what was at the time the Cabinet Office. And we basically did a shed load of work with them. We got it launched as a white paper for the government. And unfortunately, the organisation that was behind all that lost their contract and it went to Capita. And after that, that kind of theme of working on very large scale projects kind of left me completely. But what we thought we could take what we learned and what we did and turn it into a way of approaching for smaller businesses.
Mm.
So that's kind of yeah,
Yeah.
it was a driver.
So tell us about your company now. What are the services you provide, and who are your typical customers?
Yeah, yeah. So in the moment in time, we basically have two parts to the business. So we started off as a one-man consultancy business, um, and quite simply doing consultancy work into to any company that would pretty much hire me within the financial sphere. We were lucky enough, as I said, we went back into Diageo for a bit, but as I say, that wasn't a long-term goal. It was a short-term cash in the door and let's get your name out there. So as we built that business, I am an accountant. I do admit that sometimes. Qualified in SEMA in 1999, and then became a fellow about 2 or 3 years later. So I hate saying the minute you're an accountant, people want you to do books for them. So in a way, we kind of even from day one, I started doing the odd book, keeping the odd accountancy stuff, a lot for charities. That seemed to be a kind of flow of where I ended up, and it's still quite core to what we do today. So in the main, we focused on the consulting side. We got involved a lot with local economic development teams, Business Gateway in Scotland. And that kind of enabled us to kind of start doing a lot of business planning work, financial forecasting, financial strategy, financial growth. And that eventually got us on to delivering courses. And I suppose the accountancy side just trickled away in the background. I'll
Mm.
be honest, I'm quite happy to share the number. I say it quite a lot. I think at one point in time, I was turning over the large sum of £10,000 a year on accountancy fees. And in my head, in the first couple of years, that was great. That was paying my overheads. That was heaven. It was, it just ticked along. It paid some overheads. Everybody was happy. And I went off and kind of the rest of it was done. I had a couple of members of staff because the accountancy side kind of grew slightly. So therefore, it wasn't really where I was wanting to be. But in about 2015, probably the reality struck, and it's possibly here at the moment, that the public sector I was working in was in a bit of a shaky peg. I wasn't quite sure where the next contract was coming from. The budgets were looking really, really tight. So we actually took a strategic move to, and I was very fortunate. I found first of all, an employee and then a business partner in Lucy Paris. And Lucy basically came on board really to lead the accountancy side. So we spun off the accountancy side, and it is now, after one very small acquisition and one, I mean, it'll still be a small acquisition in the world of business, but that's now grown. It's been going for about 7 or 8 years. And that now has probably about a dozen staff in it. And basically, we do exactly what you'd expect an accountancy practice to do: year-end accounts, bookkeeping, tax, CIS. So that is growing quite nicely and organically growing pretty well as well. And that is basically, it is now obviously a major part of the business. At the same time, that allowed us for me to focus on the consultancy part, and that consultancy part stayed directed towards the public sector. But what we did, we started looking much wider in our local environment. So we started looking for contracts that kind of worked for us. And that kind of took us to kind of probably a part of where we are at the moment. I'll kind of reverse back in a second. So, at the moment, the business, we literally work across Scotland. So we work in Ayrshire, where we're based. We work in Glasgow, and we do a lot for East Renfrewshire Council. In Business Gateway, we basically run the end-to-end service. We do work in Western Isles, across the Highlands Council region, the High region, Moray, down into Fife, and then a lot of work. And as I sit in Dumfries at one of my clients just now, we do a lot of work in the South Scotland for both SOCI and the business gateways of each Borders and Dumfries and Galloway. We do now work for Scottish Government and deliver programmes for them. So that has kind of been quite a growth piece of our public sector part. And the other thing, which is maybe going to sound a little bit strange, COVID had a massive, in the end, positive impact on our business. Don't get me wrong, when COVID hit, yeah, that was tough. Yeah, that was not easy. Obviously, public sector shut down. We were fortunate enough, we were supporting councils and grants, so it kind of kept us going. But what it enabled us to do was move all our workshops, which were face-to-face, online. And, I have to give credit to, like, an ops manager, she is now, Lindsay Murphy. And we took, on the Thursday, everything we did face-to-face, and by the Tuesday, we were running the exact same set of workshops online. And that was a big shift.
Yeah.
So, we now run probably about one-ish workshops a day. We're probably about 95% of them online across Scotland. And that's been a big change as well. So, use of technology and back to the speed of use of technology.
Yeah.
As a small business, we've got that benefit. Comes on stock every now and again. You love webinars.
Yeah, look, I experienced the same thing. COVID was an absolute blessing in some ways for me, because I used to run around in my car all over the central belt of Scotland, meeting business owners, running workshops, and now we do it all on Zoom. And well, not all of it, but most of it's on Zoom, and you become much more productive.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm down in quite a large client of ours, where we're virtual FD at the moment, and in one of the boardrooms. And yeah, we're still doing a lot of face to face, but as I say, 90% of our work is now pretty much remote. Although, in saying that, I mean, this week so far, I've been in the Black Isle with a client, I've been in Inverness, Elgin, and Forres. So, face to face isn't dead yet.
But it's also good to be face to face sometimes and get about.
100%. It's about choosing the right meetings to be face to face at. And I'll honestly tell you, I mean, I would say the client in the main prefers it. The reality is, if we used to go up to Fife quite a lot and do literally face-to-face meetings with clients for on behalf of Business Gateway, great. I actually really loved it. It was a great bit of work. But the client might have came from St Andrews. They had a 40-minute drive to get to me. I had a 2-hour drive to go to the office. and they came to me. So, they wasted 80 minutes of a day to come and see me for a 1 hour meet. And when you switch it to Zoom or whatever, meeting's over in 50 minutes, they go back to do what they're doing, and so do I.
And you end up having more effective conversations because there's maybe less chit chat and distraction and
Yeah.
conversation just tends to be more focused when you're on Zoom.
Yeah.
Maybe because people want to get off it as quickly as
100%.
which is fine, right? Um, so Colin, what's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
That is an interesting one. I mean, what would you say?
Hard to pick.
Yeah, it really is hard to pick. I mean, I think it's about people, if I'm really honest. Um, Finding the right people, finding the right individuals to work with. Now, I don't mean just staff here, I mean clients. I mean, we use a lot of contractors, consultant contractors as well.
Yeah.
It's finding those individuals who you want to have that long-term relationship with. We're not a short-term company. I've said that from the day one, day one, year one. This is not a short-term game for me. Um, you know, we put I was when we first got our very first contract with Business Gateway, and I was only on my own, by the way. I was luckily just a jobbing advisor, let's call it. I was told by the guy, Ian Russell, and then a guy called Ronnie McLaren from a company called BDA, who we still have a relationship with 16 years later. Um, Put the client first. And that has been a motto of mine for a long, long time. Now, when I go to my financial controller, bookkeeper, etc., they do sometimes wonder why I'm not charging for certain things. But in the end, these are long-term relationships with people. And they know they can trust me to come to me for a question, and I'm not going to sit with the usual 6 minute consultant clock next to me and charge them for every 6 minutes. Now, I'm not saying financially that's the best way, but from a long term view of the world, I've been doing it for 16 years. It seems to be working. So yeah, people's key, and as I say, that's across relationships with clients, relationships with potential. And when I say clients, remember we do a lot in the public sector, so our main client is the public sector body,
Mhm.
and we will then work with their clients if that makes sense. So there's two sets of clients there. Obviously, staff. I've it's been an interesting year with staff, ups and downs, staff in, staff out. And yeah, I think that's been probably the biggest learning of just the management of staff. I'm not a massive micromanager type scenario. I quite like staff to kind of, I bring staff on because of skill set. So therefore, I like them to go on and kind of do what they do. So yeah, that's probably the kind of key area of learning for me.
What's been your biggest challenge during the years, Colin, and who may have been somebody that's helped you through it?
Um, I would say the growth spurt is probably the biggest challenge. That when you start off as a one-man band, that growth spurt is bringing on your first employee, and that's not easy. You know, you don't have as a consultant. My diary is a very strange thing. It's slightly different now, but when I first started out, I couldn't have told you what I was doing in 3, 4 weeks' time. I had no pipeline of work, and you're bringing on a member of staff, and you have to pay them, and you're thinking, I literally am taking a calculated gamble here. I don't know whether I'm going to have enough money in the bank at the end of the month to pay this person. So that's your first little growth spot that really causes you grief. I guess when you then start to grow, it's the management of that growth, the management of cash, the management of people, the management of bringing consultants in, and literally that whole big jigsaw of getting those balances as right as you can. You're never going to get it perfect, so you're bringing all that together, and that growth spurt has happened 2 or 3 times now. I'm possibly getting used to it. I'm not saying I am, but it's at that point, you are putting things on the line.
Yeah.
working too many hours, cash is tight. The pipeline might be pretty good, but you're always balancing that. And that's probably the key areas. I want to go back to obviously, I'll say in the last 8 years when we've really started to grow. My first fiance and now wife, etc., and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I hate to say, I have to do the natural thing and say, she has been pretty much a rock behind me. So let's move on from that one.
Yeah. Big shout out to her.
I would say actually, I do probably delve into the past a little bit too much, and therefore, who's helped me on? Maybe there's been tons of people round about me on a day-to-day basis. My father, my mother, that type of thing. There's been people who I've listened to and confided in, and a lot of the consultants we now work with on projects are consultants I've known now for 14, 15 years. So there's a whole range of those individuals. But there's probably still two family members who are long since passed, who are still the backbone of maybe what I'm doing today. As I say, my father's business, that was that was it. My mother was more, to be honest, the accountancy side comes from her. She was a numbers person. That's what you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was the aunt I mentioned earlier, who had an unbelievable career and unbelievable academic career. She was out learning German in the 30s in Germany. Not from just that's where she was. She'd been in France, went to Germany, everything kicked off. And there obviously she had to get out. So, her influence of my academic career over the years, I'm always kind of reflecting back on him. Secondly, is a guy called John Stowe, who was married to a cousin of mine. My family was quite wide. My dad was the youngest of seven, and basically he married late. So I've got cousins that are a lot older than me, kind of scenario. And John, I suppose when I was young and growing up, he ran multiple businesses. And I probably had that little bit of, yeah, that's quite a good thing. I quite like that. Quite enjoy that. Not thinking any of the bad things.
Mm.
So, he was very influential. He was very, very influential in terms of giving me guidance. He's the type of guy I would phone up and get some influence from and speak through problems and everything else. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago. But yeah, so it's a strange thing to say that probably two of my biggest influences were maybe many years ago.
Sure. Well, if they're influencing you now, you don't know that they're influencing you until down the road. So they're going to be from
100%.
they're going to be from the recent past, most likely. Brilliant. What's the next big thing for you in your business, Colin? So what do the next 1 to 3 years look like in terms of opportunity,
Yeah.
growth, and challenges?
There's three. I'll start with the challenge, and sorry, this is going to sound a bit like a broken record. We need people who can deliver and support us on this journey. So that's the first thing. And we are, we're working away, getting good stuff in and developing that network. So that's the first part, because that's going to what's deliver the next kind of three-pronged attack. The accountancy side, yeah, organic growth. We've probably no intentions of buying again at this moment in time. So it'll be organic growth and continuously kind of moving that through. More looking at how we deliver, looking at what we deliver, looking at how we charge what we deliver, and tightening all that up. So there's probably a 3-year strategy there immediately, which myself and my business partner look at, and we're really starting to kind of drive that home. The second part is we have actually renamed our business. It's not officially renamed yet, but my email address is. We've renamed it CJM Lumina. So you'll see probably the initial conversation was from a CJM accountancy email address.
Mm.
My business, if you go and Google it, is CJM Accountancy or it's CJM Project Financial Management. The reality is that for now several years, we have not been a pure financial management company. We now deliver 40% of our work is on programs. So at the moment, we are running a program for self-employed. We're running a program for parents who are looking to get back into work through self-employment. We are running an accelerator program for about 9 quite interesting potentially very large scale up businesses. We're running programs for what is called the diverse business community. So literally it covers everything which would be the kind of traditional Black Asian community right through to those who maybe have everything from ADHD to anything along those lines, but all have a passion for scale up. Now that covers everything from marketing to strategy to finance to HR to AI, and nothing on our website and nothing in my name said that we did any of that. So we will be doing an official launch soon, which basically takes our business to be much more aware of what we actually do, and making people aware when they come onto our website and land and say, actually, we're not just finance guys. So that's a big push, and that is, the focus has been fantastic. I mean, we've done projects. I say we're currently working on a project with the Scottish Government. We're working in the Highlands on um, literally the financial sustainability of childminders. Work that one out. Fantastic depopulation program. So we are still 60% financial management experts. So that's what we do: business plans, cash flows. They continue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the growth plan in what is the core business at the moment. As of, and this isn't a secret, so I'm not telling you, before the launch or anything like that, I'm afraid. But yeah, we will launch not necessarily a new company at the moment, but it will definitely be a new site. It will be a new focus. We do a lot of um, private training on Zero, which is the accountancy platform. And we do, hence the reason I'm here today, we do a lot of virtual FD work, or fractional FDs is the correct terminology these days. So we feel as though that, again, if our the kind of core of the company is really focused towards public sector programs, etc., we will literally launch an organisation which is targeted to the private sector, but on those two key matters. And it's not that we're not doing it; we are already doing it. It's
Yeah.
just about really putting a face on it, allowing it to grow its own identity, being able to market it and grow it better, and not get lost in the mix of the other stuff we do. And that was one of the reasons why we separated the accountancy company 8 years ago. It's very difficult if you land on a web page, and in one instance we're saying, yeah, of course we can do this massive financial management program for you, but at the same time, yeah, if you're a landscape gardener, we'll do your books.
Yeah.
It doesn't balance.
No,
It's a
no.
mixed message. So that's the two key. That is our 3 year strategy.
Fantastic. Finally, Colin, then what advice would you have for business owners or people who are thinking of going out on their own or who are just starting out on their own? What would be your number one piece of advice?
I'm going to use a few little words and then I'll expand on it. Give it a go. Do you know? I have some really tough days. I still have them. The problems kind of just change a little bit. They maybe get bigger, but you kind of manage them. But at the same time, I love what I do. And that's the first thing. Don't go into business with something you don't like. Don't do something you're going to enjoy. Because, and this is going to sound strange from a West of Scotland accountant who basically really manages money for people. Um, if money's your only focus in life, it's a tough gig being a businessman or a business person. Because in the end of the day, that week, that month where money isn't going well, what are you clinging on to? You need to cling on to your passion. You need to cling on to your vision. You need, drive the business forward. And the money will come. So to me, give it a go. Calculate the risk, but for heaven's sake, do it in something you enjoy.
Great advice. Great advice. Colin, we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. That's
Thank you, Andy. Really a pleasure. Thank you.
Colin McNally from CJM on the Founders Chair podcast today. I can get your name right. I can't get my own right. Yeah, and this is Andy Goldberg on the Founders Chair podcast, talking to Colin McNally from CJM. And thank you. And thanks to all our listeners, as always. And we look forward to seeing you on the Founders Chair podcast again real soon. Have a great one.
Cheers.